The red numbers are already climbing. Somewhere in America, a gas pump clicks past $3.84 a gallon. On your screen, oil jerks upward, ships sit motionless off Muscat in the white Gulf haze, and your Monday evening deadline is almost here. If Iran does not reopen the Strait of Hormuz, you have already said what happens next. America hits its power plants. Now you are boxed in by your own ultimatum. At first, this war feels manageable. You hit hard, but not all the way. After the strikes around Karg Island in mid-March, you make a point of saying, "I have chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island." Then comes the warning, if Iran interferes with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, you will immediately reconsider. That is the formula: strength with restraint, maximum pressure, controlled damage. You show force, but stop short of the one move that could send the global energy market into full panic. Then Hormuz stays choked anyway. And that changes everything. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not just a narrow strip of water between Iran and Oman. It carries about 20% of the world's crude oil. In 2025, roughly 15 million barrels of crude and another 5 million barrels of oil products move through it every day, according to S&P Global. Before the war, around 100 to 135 vessels a day crossed that passage. Then the war begins on February 28th. By March 6th, traffic collapses. Only 9 vessels transit the strait. 9, down from a February average of 135 a day. Tanker rates jump 30% in a single day. The global VLCC rate hits $269,500 a day. Ships anchor off Muscat, waiting in the heat. Some switch off transponders and go dark. One vessel signals China owner all crew, as if a line of text might do what warships cannot. You promise the free flow of energy. It doesn't matter, the waterway does not reopen because you say it should. That is the first real shock of this story. Not military weakness, market reality. You can threaten, you can posture, you can even try to subsidize courage. The Guardian reports your administration backs a $20 billion reinsurance scheme to coax ships back into the strait. You reportedly tell ship owners to show some guts, and still they mostly stay out. Because captains, insurers, and traders do not move on swagger. They move on risk. Now the war comes home the way these wars always do. Not through casualty lists first, through prices. On March 2nd, average US gasoline climbs above $3 a gallon for the first time since November. By March 4th, it hits $3.11, the biggest one-day spike since March 4th, 2022. By March 17th, according to AP, the national average rises above $3.84 a gallon. Before the war, it was $2.98. At the same time, Brent crude jumps from roughly $70 just weeks earlier to above $100. At one point, it touches $119. Now Hormuz is no longer a foreign policy problem. It is the sharp beep of a gas pump in Ohio. It is a price board flickering higher in Pennsylvania. It is airline fuel, freight surcharges, inflation nerves, and the kind of number voters memorize without trying. And the polling starts to close in. A Reuters Ipsos poll finds only 29% approve of the strikes on Iran. 64% say you have not clearly explained the goals of US involvement. 67% expect gas prices to get worse over the next year. Nearly half say the war will hurt their personal finances. Even 44% of Republicans expect gas prices to worsen. That is the collision point. You came back promising strength. You came back promising lower prices. In Hormuz, those promises start to collide, so over the weekend of March 21st and 22, you escalate the pressure personally. You announce an ultimatum. If Tehran does not reopen the Strait of Hormuz by Monday evening, Washington time, you will bomb Iranian power plants. This is different from hitting military sites, different from sparing oil infrastructure at Karg. It means pressure on the systems that keep a country running. And everyone understands what that means. If you strike power infrastructure, Iran has already threatened to retaliate against regional energy facilities and even desalination plants, the systems Gulf countries rely on for drinking water. At that point, this war spreads beyond missiles and shipping lanes. it becomes a regional infrastructure war. Oil, electricity, water. If you hold back, the danger is different. The strait stays only partly open. Oil stays nervous. The pressure at home keeps building, and people start asking the question public ultimatums always create. If the deadline passes, did the threat mean anything? Then, on March 23rd, you pause. Not a full retreat, not a full strike, a 5-day extension. You say your envoys, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, had very good talks with unnamed respected Iranian officials. That is your reason for holding off, and for a few hours it works. AP reports the extension briefly pushes oil prices down and stocks up. The market exhales. One message from you, and the ticker moves. If you're enjoying this story, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. But the facts do not move as easily as the market. Iranian officials dismiss the idea of talks. Axios reports there do not appear to have been direct talks yet with the purported senior Iranian figure. By March 24th, fighting continues. Missiles still fly. AP reports only a small number of ships are allowed through, while vessels linked to the US, Israel, or allied countries remain at risk. So the extension buys time, not resolution, and now the real suspense begins. Because the question is no longer whether you can order another strike. Of course you can. The question is what that strike actually solves. James Mattis says on March 24th, "We're in a tough spot, ladies and gentlemen, and I can't identify a lot of good options." Then comes the harder line. Targetry never makes up for a lack of strategy. That is the sentence hanging over this whole crisis. You can hit another target, but then what? Does Iran fully reopen Hormuz, or does it conclude the strait is its leverage and answer pressure with more missiles, more sabotage, more economic pain spreading across the Gulf and into global markets? And if you delay again, if 5 more days pass and shipping is still crippled, oil still unstable, Americans still watch numbers rise at the pump, then the war keeps bleeding into your presidency 1 gallon at a time. That is what makes this moment different. At the beginning, the war is about force. By March 24th, it is about clocks. The military clock says your threat has an expiration date. The market clock says every hour of uncertainty carries a price. The political clock says voters may tolerate a distant war only until it reaches their wallets. You thought you could control the escalation. Karg showed the logic. Hit hard, spare the most explosive targets, keep leverage alive. But Hormuz does not care about the script. The ships do not move because you demand it. The insurers do not move because you insist. The markets calm for a moment, then look back at the same unresolved map. And so the strait becomes something more dangerous than a battlefield. It becomes a test of control. If Iran still does not fully reopen the waterway, you face the choice you created for yourself. Strike Iranian power infrastructure and risk a broader war over oil, electricity, and water. Or delay again and let the crisis keep eating into American wallets, global shipping, and your own image of strength. The countdown is still running. And somewhere, as tankers wait in the haze and traders stare at the next headline, another gas pump clicks higher. If you enjoyed this, please like, share it with your friends, and subscribe.